Thank you, farmers, for tuning into yet another informative edition of your program. This is Agricultural New Directions Agribusiness in support of Vision 2030. Now, this is a platform which was specifically created for our farming community here in Zimbabwe. This is where the farmers and the stakeholders in the industry converge and we discuss pertinent issues in our industry. We are talking of becoming an upper middle class economy by year 2030, and as such, we need to incorporate sustainability in our enterprises. We are also talking of production economics, business finance, time value of money, to mention but a few. Now, generally, there's been a misconception in our farming community whereby farmers think that conservation agriculture is only limited to those subsistence farmers or the smallholder farmers. But here we are coming in with experts, those who manufacture equipment that is suitable for all commercial farmers, that which supports conservation agriculture. To discuss this and more, I have taken the liberty of inviting Wendy Madzura. She is an agronomist here in Zimbabwe. She works with different stakeholders and even the farmers in our farming community. Wendy, I'd like to welcome you to our platform at this point in time. We are here in Marondera. Can you maybe just introduce this episode? What is it about?
Thank you so much, Wadza. And it's a very timely episode indeed, as we are standing here in the rain, which is to show that this is the time and season for farmers to be planting their crops. So what we want to talk about is the issue of sustainable agriculture initiatives that the globe is moving with. So we also want to make sure that as we embrace these new technologies, we introduce the concept of conservation farming, whereby our farmers are supposed to come in with implements that are suitable for them to adopt conservation agriculture. So conservation, like you rightfully said, there might be a misconception that some might think it's for resource-constrained farmers, where we talk about Fumvudza being for a small area for intensive farming, but it's also a concept that commercial farmers can also adopt, in the sense that the technologies are available for them to adopt, and also it has a cost-saving implication in terms of their cost structure, thereby increasing the profitability and productivity of their ventures. So here you're seeing what I'm holding here.
Yes.
A fancy tool that I'm holding here is a soil compaction tester. So if you want to be in farming as a business, you need to understand the importance of the soil structure and the compaction that can form in your soil over the number of years that you're going to be producing. So this soil compaction meter, I'll just highlight slightly, but we'll talk about it as we progress.
Okay.
If you push it down, see, I'm struggling to push it further down there.
Okay.
This also shows that the compaction zone or the compaction layer is very close in the ground.
Okay.
So if I pull it out, we'll check at the level at which the compaction is.
Okay.
So you can see I'm trying to push it further down, but it can't go down. Imagine what it does to the root system.
Yes.
The root system also fails to go deeper down to get the nutrients, to get the moisture, thereby affecting productivity and the yield levels that farmers are going to get. So let's just pull it out. It can't go any further.
Oh,
let's
okay.
just pull it out.
Oh, okay.
So we are seeing here, that's where it is.
Oh, okay.
The muddy area here. That's where we managed to get to. So because this is also calibrated, we can also just know that the level at which it is, it's at around 10 centimeters, 15 centimeters. So it's also quite low in terms of the root zone, because our roots sometimes they go deeper down. So we want to understand that as we discuss conservation today, as our farmers plant their different crops, be it maize, be it soybean, a wide range of crops, we need to embrace conservation at a large scale for those resource-endowed farmers to also know that the implements are there.
Thank you so much, Wendy. And for our audience there at home, I should highlight that we have taken the liberty of recording this episode in the rain, because it is that time of the season, and you cannot be an agronomist or a farmer if you're afraid of the rain. So we are going to proceed with our work and with this discussion. Wendy, from an agronomic perspective, your sentiments, your word of encouragement to our commercial farmers, you would find that generally commercialization of agriculture and conservation agriculture, in years prior to this one, those two didn't go hand in hand. Can you maybe give your sentiments or highlight the advantages that comes with commercial farmers adopting these precision agricultural systems that are being put in place with the experts you are working with?
Thank you so much. So what tends to happen with conservation is that the farmers tend to shun away from the initial cost of investing in the implements that are going to be moving hand in glove with them embracing conservation, because they have had these conventional tillage methods being done over the years and over time, and they've invested in that equipment. So for them to shift into other equipment, it also tends to be a deterrent for them. But what we want to talk about today is that with conservation, even from the first year, there is a cost cost-saving implication that comes with it, because if commercial farmers are going to embrace the use of conservation methods in farming, it also has a cost-saving implication, because they are not going to come in with multiple implements which are also going to further compress the soil, thereby increasing the compaction. So it's important for them to understand that the cost-saving comes from the reduction in the amount of fuel, the reduction in the amount of implements that you're going to hire. Say, for example, you're hiring implements to establish your crop.
Yes.
And it also has a long-term beneficial effect, in the sense that if conservation is done over the years, 3 years, 5 years, multiple years, it then brings in that element of improving the soil structure.
Now you'd find that, speaking of soil, we are standing on this portion of the field. This portion hasn't been tampered with yet. There's no activity that has taken place, but next to us you'd find that there's been some activity. Before we move to the next portion, can you maybe just highlight what is taking place within these two portions?
Okay, thank you so much for that. So conservation is guided by 3 main principles. The first is that farmers should come in with minimum soil disturbance, which is to say you should only disturb the soil where you want to do production, where you are going to be planting, and leave the rest of the field undisturbed. So that's minimum soil disturbance. The second principle is the use of crop rotations. You need to come in alternating the different crops that you're putting in, because it also adds value. Then the third principle that our farmers should know is that we need to have ground cover. The ground cover also then acts as a blanket, which also then conserves the moisture and prevents erosion, unnecessary runoff on top of the soil. So conservation also speaks to issues to do with having ground cover, permanent ground cover, so to say. So what we are seeing here is a field that might appear unprepared for the season, but this field is ready for the season, because the implements that are going to go in know and understand that they are going to be planting in a field like this. We are going to be coming in with a specialized implement, which is going to be just opening up the rows where the planter is going to be following up and planting, and leaving the rest of the land between the rows undisturbed. So we'll hear more about these specialized implements from the experts who also specialize in the equipment.
Now, Wendy, I would like you also to talk about issues surrounding commercialization as we close. Is it possible for a farmer to adapt this system and remain viable in the farming business?
It is, Wadza. It is quite possible. Why? Because it's a two-edged sword. Initially, you're going to be getting the benefits by reducing your input cost, whereby if you're going to be coming in with less operations at the initial stage of planting, because when we talk of profit, we talk of the return per dollar invested after factoring in all the other operations that went into the production of that crop. So if you're going to be saving every dollar you save, it also contributes to the bottom line, which is your profitability. So that's one end of it. Then the other side, there is the implication that over time, you're also going to get the value, which you cannot substitute with anything and get from anywhere else. You need to build and nurture your soil. We need to make sure that we adopt sustainable agriculture, because if we don't do that, and we continue to do the conventional way of doing things over and over again without coming in with minimum soil disturbance, it also builds to the erosion of the topsoil, erosion of the rooting zone. We also get gully formation, and it also then affects our ability to mitigate the effects of climate change, which include the reduction in the amount of water or moisture we are receiving after at the end of the season. So if you embrace conservation, it also speaks to the mitigation of the effects of climate change that include reduction in water that we're going to get in the season.
There you heard it, viewers. Today we are looking at conservation agriculture for all commercial farmers here in Zimbabwe. It is not just unique to subsistence farmers or smallholder farmers. You can still adopt it as a commercial farmer, and do not worry, you can still remain profitable and viable, from what Wendy was telling us here. On that note, we are going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the second segment. Stay tuned. Welcome back, farmers. Thank you for tuning in to Agricultural New Directions Agribusiness in support of Vision 2030. Today we are looking at conservation agriculture, aligning it to commercial agriculture here in Zimbabwe. Now, viewers, we encourage you to be a part of these conversations. Feel free to get in touch with the producer Wadzanai Manyore on 0772807506. Alternatively, you can like our Facebook page, Agribusiness with Wadzanai. We are also available on Twitter, and our Twitter handle there is at Agribusiness110. Make a follow-up on this episode episode and more, in case you miss it, on our YouTube channel, we welcome all of your comments. They are very important to us. It's Agribusiness with Wadzanai. Now, earlier on, before into the break, we're listening to conservation agriculture from an agronomic perspective. I was with Wendy. She was telling us the nitty-gritties you need to incorporate in your enterprise if you are going to be adapting conservation agriculture as a commercial farmer here in Zimbabwe. Now, at this point in time, I've taken the liberty of inviting Ben de Klerk. He is an agricultural implement dealer here in Zimbabwe, working with our farming community to ensure that we remain viable and we are also sustainable in our enterprises. Ben, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, as we get into our discussion, Ben, earlier on we're standing at a patch that was untempered with, but now we are standing here. It looks like machinery or equipment was in here. What happened? What sort of equipment was in here?
So in this field we used a strip tiller just to break through the compaction.
Okay.
And the purpose of that is so that the water can drain down, so that the water doesn't sit near the surface and evaporate, and we still can maintain the residue on the surface so that we can reduce the temperatures on the soil itself, as well as allow it to break down and create natural humus.
Okay.
By doing this, we've been able to penetrate the soil a lot deeper.
Okay.
We're now going down to about 300 to 400 millimeters, so that we get the water drainage as well as better root development.
Now, Ben, if you look at SDG number 12, United Nations Agenda Vision 2030, it speaks of sustainability in our agricultural enterprises. But sustainability is sort of like an investment for our farming community. Now, as an investment, these implements, you are a dealer, you are working with farmers. What is it like? Your sentiments, your word of encouragement to our farming community in terms of investing in these kinds of implements on their farms?
So it is very valuable to invest in this kind of equipment if you're going to progress into conservation farming. The return on your investment will be noticed immediately, but as you grow, as the farm develops and as the crop increases, you'll be able to expand.
Okay.
Because your planting times are shorter. Your crop yield is better, it's greater. So as you invest in it now, it will become easier and you get healthier soils.
Now, Ben, you would find that for the sake of our audience there at home, after this process, the nature of the implements that you have used, have you already planted? Are you still going to plant? How is it going to be done? Given that from a naked eye, from the traditional agronomic practices that we are used to, we would say that nothing has happened in here. What is going to come next after this? We are also going to be looking at pest control or weed control. But using your implements, how can a farmer further take advantage of those implements and remain in line with conservation agriculture?
So we have already started planting in this field, in part of the field. Unfortunately, due to the rains, we did have to pull out. But you would not see much difference in the lands after the planter has been here. The key note is that you'd have to use a zero-till capable planter to plant in these conditions.
Okay.
You would not be able to go in with a conventional machine.
Okay.
So it is an investment to move over to the zero-till or conservational practices, but in the long run it will be definitely worthwhile.
Okay, moving right along, in terms of our farming community in Zimbabwe embracing these technologies, you are an agro implement dealer. In terms of embracing these technologies, you are working with farmers, you are working with different stakeholders. How has been the uptake? Are they keen on it, or they still a bit of maybe shyness, or maybe they are shunning the new technologies? How has it been, like your observations?
It certainly has been a slow uptake with the new technology and the understanding of zero-till and conservation farming practices. It will improve. More and more farmers, the newer, younger generation coming into farming, is really embracing this conservation farming practices, and they are starting to see the economic benefit as well as the nutritional benefit in the soils.
Okay. Also, Ben, I would also want you to highlight in terms of training or in terms of knowledge acquisition, how are these machines, how are these implements for our Zimbabwean farming community?
Look, it's very important for training when you get this equipment, to understand how to use it, how to set it in order to get your best results out of the equipment. If you don't set it up properly, you will have problems with the results. However, we strongly recommend that you partner with good implement suppliers, you partner with good seed suppliers, you partner with good chemical suppliers, and take on their advice.
Okay.
They are specialists in their field, and that's why I wouldn't talk about chemicals.
Okay. Now, Ben, finally, we have come to the end of this segment. Your word of advice, your parting words to our farming community in terms of obtaining or purchasing their equipment from reputable dealers.
Look, my word of advice would be that buying equipment from reputable dealers which have the capacity to back up and support the equipment, that have spares holdings and are able to assist you at the drop of a hat, is so vital, especially in times of planting, when you have a small window in order to get your crop established.
Thank you so much, Ben. That was very important. In the words of Ben, you need to understand that when purchasing your equipment, be sure that your supplier is able to come with backup equipment, or maybe even when it comes to servicing, you need to have someone good in your corner. You can call and tell, you know what, I'm having challenges with this type of machinery. We're going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the third and final segment. Stay tuned. Hello farmers, thank you for staying tuned to Agricultural New Directions Agribusiness in support of Vision 2030. Today we are looking at conservation agriculture in Zimbabwe, aligning it to commercial agriculture. Speaking of profitability and commercialization in agriculture, I have taken the liberty of inviting a female commercial farmer here in Zimbabwe, Ruramiso Mashumba. She is also the CEO of Munandi Africa, which is an organization that works with smallholder farmers, especially women, and encouraging them on how to do their agricultural enterprises. Ruramiso, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Wadza.
As we get into our discussion, Ruramiso, what inspired you or motivated you to get into conservation agriculture, given that you're a commercial farmer?
Wadza, I have traveled to many countries now, visiting different farms. And what I found is that farmers in developed worlds are now using conservation agriculture. In fact, some of them have been using it for over 30 years, and yet here in Zimbabwe we haven't yet adapted. And they're already seeing increase of yields. And we see here in Zimbabwe with our excessive droughts, our challenges even with sometimes water, availability of water in our dams running out before the season ends, that we really need to start thinking about what are we going to do in the future. Are we going to remain the way we are, or are we going to move to future technologies? So that's what really inspired me, and I really wanted to ensure that I am ahead in terms of adapting technology, and not only for myself but also for the community, which I also support.
Can you maybe educate our farmers there at home, encourage them, your word of advice in terms of adapting these technologies? Is it worthwhile? Is it going to benefit you in the long run?
Yes, Wadza, it's worthwhile because this is not an experiment. Lots of other farmers have been doing this, like I mentioned, and some people have had over 20 years adapting, and they've seen the increase of yield over the years. So yes, you see that the weeds here, that's just because we've just finished planting, but afterwards we're going to come in with our boom spray and our glyphosate, and we're going to spray the weeds, and then they will sort of like dry and become a live mulch. So like how we are talking about collecting mulch or that dead mulch grass and mulching our field. In fact, here when you just leave this patch which is not tilled or not disturbed, when you spray your Roundup, it will then eventually die, and then it becomes like a live mulch, which also protects from evaporation. So that's why you're seeing it like this. But if you come back in maybe a few weeks, you'll find that it's starting to dry, and it will become the mulch, which will provide that soil cover and also prevent evaporation from continuing if it's naked ground. And also it will ensure less soil erosion, because of course if ground is bare
and it rains, all that soil will be washed away into be soil erosion. So there is so many benefits of using this technology.
What motivated you to say, you know what, I'm going to form an organization that is not going to be making profits, but just educating the African women who are into agriculture? What motivated you?
Well, I was motivated by many things in my life. One of them is the fact that my late grandmother, was also a smallholder farmer, not so far away from here, and she would farm with her hands, and and I saw the struggles she went through just trying to take her children to school, which she managed to do, but it was so difficult. So I think of those women like my grandmother who are also trying to find solutions, but may not have the same access to education as I have. And also, I also feel that, when you, with the knowledge you get, it's important to impact it and share it with other people so that they too can be able to scale up. We have a responsibility as citizens in Zimbabwe, especially when we go and you see so much and you learn so much. It's really our responsibility to come back and be able to not only use the exposure for yourself, but also use it to impact and empower other people.
Now, Ruramiso, what have you planted this season, especially using this conservation system, number one? And secondly, what other crops are you doing? What other enterprises do you have here on your farm?
So here, using the conservation agriculture, we have planted maize. There's some maize here, you can see.
Okay.
It's pushed down. We've also got green mealies on the corner there. And I've also got potato growing in the field, and we've got a few vegetables as well in the field. That's what we have planted, and we also have a bit of livestock.
Okay. Also, I've seen that when we arrived, there is a station where there are a lot of solar panels, meaning that you invested in renewable sources of energy. What motivated you, or also what inspired you to make such a huge investment? That is what is being referred to these days as impactful investment. What motivated you?
Well, Wadza, we need power, and we need power every day. So what motivated me was here in Marondra, we had so many power cuts that were slowing down our production. So we decided, what, we've got the sun. Why can't we use the sun to power operation? That's one of the reasons. And as well, I'm a climate activist.
Yes.
I believe in protecting the climate. So, in the future, we're going to be able to then get carbon credits for our investments, like our solar that we're putting. Right now, we're still in the initial stages as Zimbabwe, but that's what we hope, to be able to generate carbon credits from our soils, from our solar, from just different activities that we're doing. So we're trying to create a green farm where everything is sustainable.
Can you just highlight in a snippet the importance of these relationships and how they can be nurtured to ensure that as a farmer you are well equipped and you are knowledgeable and you are viable in your enterprise as we close?
So no one knows everything. Sometimes you'll find that you might know about the seeds, the genetics and everything, but you might not have the same experience of the soils, the equipment, or the fertilizers. But it's very important for us to bring together different people, different departments, different heads, and sort of do like a brainstorm where we are discussing how can we increase our yields. Long time ago, they used to have those clubs, in communities where people used to sit and share information. But now it's up to us to start creating maybe different clubs, like a TV program, like where we are still socializing amongst each other, but we're using the access to technology to do that. So it's very important for us to find ways on how can we share information, how can we listen to someone who is doing research on something that can help us increase our yields, because every little small increase adds up in the end.
Thank you so much, Ruramiso. It was a pleasure having you with us today.
Thank you very much, Wadza.
On that note, viewers, we have come to the end of this week's episode. From me, your host, Wadzanai Manyore. I'm also on Instagram. It's a W Manyore. And the crew behind the scenes. Have yourselves a fabulous evening. Thank you for watching.